So coming from an architecture background, during my thesis, I was very interested in the issues of the urban, and I didn't really have the sort of faculties who would push me towards that because it's a very strict training in a very strict silo. So, for personally, it has been very interesting in terms of understanding of how things are interrelated. I think it's interesting to have a group of faculties who are practicing, and the things that they bring to the classroom apart from theoretical knowledge or their disciplines is the practice projects that they've been doing for a long time. So it's very important to have people who will point out the challenges of any project or any research that they've been doing. So it that sort of makes a very unique classroom experience where you're not only just understanding the theoretical basis or the whys and hows of doing things, but also what are the challenges that one faces in governance or in working with different stakeholders. I think UFP has been a roller coaster, and at moments you feel like you're so confused and there's so much new knowledge, and you don't really have the time to read up everything that you've been given, and that sort of challenges you because for me, I've had 5 years of a very strict training, so to think beyond that is a challenge in itself. But I think the projects, the practica, and the internships sort of help you to understand its implications, and you hopefully understand the value of the commons or the different electives that you've taken, and still sort of integrate that with your training that you've had in your discipline. So, in terms of my skills, I think um, I had taken up the skill labs of GIS and art programming. So that sort of, I mean, it is a very difficult thing to learn in such a short time, but it pushes you to understand data, and especially quantitative data, and how to just make sense of all of that. When I think about the course structure, I wonder whether I should have taken a streamlined sort of direction into housing when I know I'm interested in that. But also, in retrospect, I feel that the Commons sort of helped expand that idea of affordability, of housing, of proposition. So I'm a bit conflicted about that, whether it is important to have that. And I do feel now that it has helped me, even though from the beginning I knew what sort of line I had wanted to go. So when we're working in a team, it's important to understand what people from their specific fields and experiences are bringing to the discussion, and expand your idea of how one should approach this project, what should be considered, how to move forward, and think about the field. And especially on field, when we were interacting with different people on the site, it was interesting to see what sort of questions people are asking, and how to come to a consensus of what the project should be and what should our inquiry be for the project. So in that terms, I think having an interdisciplinary group sort of pushes everyone to think or and learn from each other in terms of skills, inquiries, rigor, and the field based component has been very integral to our UFP structure. Even in the integrative case week, we visited waste collection sites and we spoke to a lot of stakeholders there, and Hasrudullah, who has been facilitating the work there. So, having that on ground experience was very helpful. Of course, the language is a big barrier for us to understand since none of us really know Kannada. But so far, it has been really important to understand. Of course, it has a contemporary relevance because we are talking about the urban and emerging issues of the urban and cities who are transitioning from the rural to the urban. So it becomes very important to understand how this transition plays out. How does one think about this? How does one propose for it? How does one sort of work with the existing governance structures to tackle these issues? So, in that way, and even in our classrooms, we do refer to news articles and things that are happening actually in the world and see how they sort of relate with what we're learning in the UFP. It's a very unique experience to live with the people who you're working and studying with. We all travel together. We we spend all our evening together. We eat together. We share a lot of time together. And I think 7 months, it seems like a short time, but having spent all these moments together, you become very attached to the place, the culture, the work environment, and the people that are around you. So I think it is sort of important because even when you're doing group projects, at at some random points you'll get some ideas and you'll go to someone's room and discuss it with them, and you'll probably just spend a lot of time together thinking about things. I think specifically for me, it really helped because two, three of the master classes were really based on my specific interest, and they were all sort of they were all practitioners I had studied in my college years, and I was very interested in issues of agrarian urbanism. And we had Lorraine and Thomas speaking about their work, which I had sort of referred in my thesis. So it was very interesting to actually see them in person, discuss with them issues of the specific sites they're looking at, such as Gurgaon and Hyderabad, and sort of draw parallels from my thesis, which I had based in Noida, using their framework. So that was a very, I mean, maybe I got lucky in that moment because they happened to be the people who came. But of course, it was a very important sort of moment to be able to see the people you've been reading for so long. I mean, I think it's a running joke in our class that office hours are like therapy sessions. But what's best about is that you throughout the comments there's so much like anxiety about, okay, we know all this, but what do you as a person, how do you fit within this entire scheme of things? What is your role? What can you do with the skills you have, with the training that you have? And office hours sort of helps to sort of direct, okay, this is your training, this is what you're interested in, so this is how we can see you being sort of part of something. And it sort of helps to focus back onto yourself from a classroom where the entire attention is on the class, but now you're trying to sort of navigate your own personal struggles, which all of, I think, our practitioners have also at some point faced. So it's nice to have someone older who's gone through the same things explain to you that it's perfectly normal to have these questions and move forward with it. I think the best part was just the people that were around and the work environment. I think because in college there is always a pressure to be great and to do amazing work, and I get it, everyone wants to do it. But here there was still a sort of easy environment where everyone sort of pushing each other to do something, but also understands the challenges that come with it. And I don't think that none of us really felt pressurized to come up with something great, which is always running at the back of your mind. but it feels sort of refreshing to be in such a work environment where there is a little less pressure, and there is ease in what you're doing, and there is time and space. There are reading weeks to sort of reflect back, because unless you have reflection, I think it's not really useful. For the internship, I will be working with Anand Lakhan, who's a housing rights activist in Indore, and it's a very interesting project where the two of us from UFP, who are both trained in the built environment, are going to look at housing design strategies and a township plan for around 90 households. So my core interest is in affordable housing strategies, and I hope to probably think about in situ upgradation in my hometown.